Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Reddit. Today, we're going to explore some funny stories from the malicious compliance community on Reddit. We'll get to know an airline employee who taught a lesson to an entitled businessman looking for advantages. Stay tuned, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Let's go. Doing a good job does not mean you should get a raise. At my last company, I was working as a marketing executive. The team included myself and a senior marketing executive. As time went on, I began to take on more responsibilities to the point that I was doing more than the senior in the team, which they admitted. I spoke to my manager about what I need to do to get to a senior position. She gave me goals and a timeline. I hit those targets, and she would move the goalposts. She did this 2 more times. All the while I was using my skills to reduce costs and improve the projects I was working on. Specifically, I had started to design everything myself instead of using the expensive design agency, saving the company £45,000 per year. I finally set another meeting with my manager to discuss a promotion. I showed her how I'd increased the profit margins of all my projects and all the extra work I'd been doing. Her response was, "Just because you make nice things and do extra work doesn't entitle you to a promotion." I sat there shocked, while she said, "But don't worry, you'll get there," then ended the meeting. She had led me on about a promotion for 2 years. Here's where I started my malicious compliance. I stopped doing anything outside my job description, which included all the design work. Everything went to an agency. The whole team relied on my design work, but when I told them why I was stopping, they were also quite happy to start using the expensive agency. It wasn't until our next quarterly meeting that my manager noticed our profits per project had harshly dropped. When she questioned why we were spending so much, I said, "As design is out of my remit, we had to use an agency." She was livid, as she had to present the stats to the CEO that week, who ended up yelling at her in front of the directors. She tried to give me an official warning for sabotaging the team, but a talk with HR cleared that away when they realized it wasn't part of my role. She then told me that I had to sign a new contract with an updated job description. I declined that too. Eventually, she asked me what it would take to get me to continue running my projects like I used to, and I mentioned the job title and salary increase. She begrudgingly accepted. I was worried about her being hostile, but then COVID hit and the lady was made redundant. I stayed for a further 2 years before finally moving to a much better place at the start of this year. And as of today, her LinkedIn continues to show that she's unemployed. TLDR manager keeps getting me to jump through hoops to get a promotion, then tells me even if I do a good job, I don't deserve one. So I stopped doing anything out of my job description and caused the team's profits to decrease a steep amount. Manager get yelled at by CEO. I am offered the promotion, and then my manager is made redundant in COVID and has stayed unemployed since. You don't move cars in the wrong spaces? Well, I'll park here then. This happened to me back in early 2015. We just recently made the move to purchase a new EV. At the time, the batteries in the EVs were small compared to today and only had around a 60 to 80 mile range. Well, one of our first larger journeys was to a shopping center about 60 miles away. We chose to go to this shopping center as it also was one of the first places to have EV charging compared to other shops, and at the time, the charging was still free. So we hoped to go there, get a free charge while shopping, and then head home with a full battery. Before we set off, we checked the charger was working through its app, and once we were happy, we made the journey. When we arrived, we found where the chargers were placed and ran into our issue. They were working fine, but they were fully blocked by non-EV cars. The bays were marked, but for whatever reason people had parked in them. No worries, I thought, and I went into the center to the information desk to ask if they would announce for whoever to pop to their car to move it. They said they didn't do that and wouldn't. I explained I needed to charge to get home and could they please make an exception. They would not, and so I angrily dropped a hint about them clamping the car or leaving a ticket on it. They said they don't do that either. In fact, the car park was not monitored at all as it was free to park for the day, so no cameras were needed to monitor the car park and there were no car part attendants. So you don't do anything about incorrectly parked cars? I asked. The answer I got was a firm no from the information desk person, and they really didn't want to be bothered again. As I got back to the car, I saw there was a pavement to the edge of the chargers. The chargers were situated close to the building, but the pavement was in a place that wouldn't be used much when walking around the car park. It also didn't lead anywhere, and more importantly didn't lead to any disabled or parent parking spots. It was also very wide, which gave me an idea. I then drove to the end of the car park, mounted the wide pavement, made sure there was no one around, and slowly drove to the chargers. My cable then reached, I started the charge, locked the car, and went shopping. I got back to the car at the end of the day with some form of employee, possibly security but wasn't sure, in front the center looking perplexed at our car parked on the pavement. I just unlocked the car, pulled the cable away, and drove off with a full charge. Safe to say the next time I went a year later there were signs on the EV bays stating parking restrictions. There was a fine for non-EVs and they were marked with more paint to make them extra obvious. Oh, and a couple of bollards at the end of the pavement where I mounted the curb. TLDR, the EV space was blocked that I needed and they don't ticket cars, so I parked on the pavement for the day. Won't let me tear down the setup and go home? Alright. This is a story a few years old back from when I worked as an outside sales agent at a company that did government phones. To preface this, I live in Oklahoma, and if you've never been in Oklahoma we have what's known as tornado season. With tornadoes come high winds, and my daily setup involved setting up a canopy tent outside. As the name of my role implies, we tie it down upon setup and secure it, but there realistically isn't much we're able to do for them in high winds. The company always said don't stay outside when the winds pick up as they would rather not have to pay for new tents every week. My supervisor though? She always said to stay out and ignore what her bosses would say on the morning Zoom calls about tearing down. This compliance takes place over the course of a few weeks, but for the sake of speed I'll skip a few things. The wind was high one day. It was about 50 miles per hour and my setup for the day was one where there wasn't much around to secure it to. I always managed to do it just fine. But when high winds happened the legs were going to snap and I wasn't even allowed to set at half height. I said winds were picking up and I shouldn't be keeping the tent up so it wouldn't break. Boss said I wasn't allowed to. So over the course of about 2/3 weeks I let 10 or 12 tents break and it got to the point the bosses had definitely notified. I cost the company easily the $1,000 or $2,000 before my supervisor was finally forced to let us tear down in high winds. Want to start production without the letter of credit? This story goes back to the mid-1990s when I was working for a company that made small metering pumps used in the manufacture of many products. The biggest market was in the spinning of synthetic fiber, an industry that literally touches all of us, except nudists and cotton-only folks, every day. In broad terms, the fiber material starts out as a liquid solution, rayon, viscose fiber, acrylics, or a molten polymer, polyester, nylon, polypropylene, etc. The pumps push the fluid through a spinneret at a very precise flow rate, creating the filament that's made into the fiber. At that time an average plant would have 75 of the pumps in service. A really big plant would have as many as 1,100. One plant that made cigarette filter material had a couple of thousand running at any given time. I was working in the international group when I got a fax, mid-90s, remember, from our commissioned agent Joseph in India. He wanted me to call him at home to discuss something. He had a customer that was willing to buy 340 pumps for a fiber plant. Joe asked if we could increase his commission from 10% to 15%. It seemed that the end user's purchasing guy wanted to, set up his retirement fund. Corporate policy permitted such things if it was local custom and if it was signed off by the GM. It was customary, and it was approved. In short order, a $640,000 order rolled in. I'm a hero as it's the biggest order of the year. But the order has the caveat from Joe to not start production until the letter of credit was in hand. This was about 30 weeks before the end of the fiscal year. The pumps had a lead time of 16 weeks, so 14 weeks to get the L/C, piece of cake. Manufacturing and the GM were of course eager to get things going. Shipping the pumps in the current fiscal year would make a pretty good impact on the shipping dollars and would probably be enough to get the GM into bonus territory. So predictably, the GM is pushing the manufacturing folks to get started. The manufacturing folks were on us like hobos on ham sandwiches looking for permission to start manufacturing. First it was weekly, then about 10 weeks out from the drop-dead start date it went to twice a week, then to daily. We refused to release the order because no L/C was in hand. I was chasing Joe a couple of times a week for the L/C. He kept getting reassurances that it was coming. On a trip to India, I went with Joe to the customer to see when we could expect the L/C. It is coming. Well, okay. So a week before the drop-dead date, no L/C. I was in my sales manager Tim's office when the head of manufacturing comes waltzing in looking for the release. Tim looked at him and said, "Our agent says don't start without an L/C. We want to trust him. But make them if you want." Production started the next day. These pumps were mostly standard. Mostly. You see, the pumping bits were mounted on a casting that extended down to a foot that fit between two trunnions. The assembly would be pinched between the trunnions and pivoted over onto a gear on a line shaft. The pump had a gear on its drive shaft. It meshed with the line shaft gear and the pump turned. If this seems weird, it is the finest 1928 technology that allows a failed pump to be isolated and hot swapped. See this picture for some clarity on the weirdness. The standard angle on that trunnion was 90 degrees. But not these pumps. These were 105 degrees for some reason. So 340 pumps were made with non-standard ports, and if the L/C never came, manufacturing is stuck with 340 oddball pumps. And the L/C never came. Year-end hits and the pumps are finished goods in inventory at $640,000. The real problems start when the GM ends up catching hell from the corporate offices in Illinois about the excessive inventory. Shit slides downhill, so sales/marketing catches hell too. Joe found out later that the purchasing guy didn't have the authority to buy $500,000 in pumps. He was just trying to line his pockets. Shocking, right? Where's the malicious compliance? You want us to release the order, we'll release the order. Don't blame us if it goes sideways.
Addendum: 4 months later, I managed to find another company in another country to buy the pumps, complete with the weird 105-degree trunnion mount.
Did I get any credit for that? Of course not. I left the company shortly thereafter, being on the outs with my boss for other reasons, and on the outs with manufacturing for letting them make those damn pumps. TL, the DR big order is secured with the proviso to not start manufacturing without the L/C to pay for it. Management gets greedy, jumps the gun, makes the pumps, can't ship them, catches hell for inventory, and almost eats the order. Business class upgrade if there is room. I used to work at a regional airline. The jet we used for our flight to the big city had 6 business class seats. The business class service was really good for a 2-hour flight. It included a full bar service, a hot meal, warm bread basket, followed by a trolley with dessert and signature coffee. The good old days. One of our regular travelers was a local business owner who was just a slimy businessman, SB. He had a reputation for making a lot of money from some pretty shady deals over the years. We would roll our eyes when we saw him coming to the check-in counter because he would always name drop and ask for special treatment. He always used the business class check-in line even though he was usually in economy. He didn't have frequent flyer status, but he was buddies with one of the airline executives and always let us know this fact when he checked in by making sure to tell us that he was good friends with Vice President Karen. He would always ask for free upgrades, extra baggage, not charging a change fee, last-minute discounts, etc. If he didn't get what he wanted, he immediately called VP Karen, who would usually then call us and approve whatever it was he wanted. So one day SB checks in for his flight to the big city and of course name drops and asks for a free upgrade to business class because I'm friends with VP Karen and said it would be okay. He was traveling on a discounted ticket that was not eligible for upgrade even if he did have an upgrade coupon, which he didn't. I informed him that he was not eligible for any upgrade on this ticket and gave him his boarding pass and sent him on his way. Of course, he flips open his cell phone and immediately calls VP Karen. Within 2 minutes, the phone at the check-in desk rings and it's VP Karen authorizing me to override the policy to upgrade SB to business class with no upgrade coupon required if there is room. The flight that day wasn't that busy and only one person booked in business class, leaving 5 open seats. I was really irritated, but I begrudgingly put SB on the upgrade list anyways. He returned to the check-in counter and picked up his standby boarding card and gave me that smug told you so look. But then what VP Karen said clicked with me: if there is room. The next passenger I checked in was a super nice lady, big smile, friendly, please and thank you. Oh, thank you so much for checking my bags to my connecting flight. That's so nice of you. I was taking my time and we were chatting a bit since it wasn't that busy. She was a teacher going on a trip to see her family, and it was her first visit with them in over a year and was going to meet her new little nephew for the first time. She was overjoyed just to have the time off to travel. I typed in a few things into the computer to make it look like I was checking something about her connecting flights and then said, "Oh, you have been selected today to receive a free upgrade to business class." She was shocked. I've never flown business class in my life. This is so amazing. At that time, we were rarely questioned if we upgraded someone without a certificate. Over the next 20 minutes, I found excuses to upgrade 4 other passengers, one who worked for one of our top corporate accounts, one who was legitimately a frequent flyer. Can't remember the other reasons, but by the time I went to board the flight, I had to tell SB that I was sorry, but business class was full and couldn't offer him an upgrade today. The teacher I upgraded profusely thanked me again when she boarded with the rest of the business class passengers. Little did she know that it really made my day also.